Welcome, welcome, welcome to the UpKeep Pledge Pros Podcast, a podcast dedicated to unmatched value and unwavering support for our community and our customers. Today, we have my longtime friend, the first podcast I was ever on with. We have Rob Kalwarowsky, executive coach, leadership mentor, and just all around industry professional. Rob, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Yeah, it's funny. We've known each other for I think around 5 years now. So it's been amazing to know you and see all your growth.
I know, isn't it wild? You invited me on the podcast just about, yeah, a little over 5 years ago. You had seen something that I had written about human-centric leadership, and I know you are huge in that realm, and invited me on with Jim Van Tigrum and the rest of the crew, and I was just the new kid on the block. But it was awesome. So I wanted to first, before we get into everything, Rob, I know you have a tremendous history, not just in reliability engineering and mining and heavy industry, but in leadership and coaching, in executive leadership and stuff like that. So, if you could tell us where you started, where you got your foot in the door, what you were doing, and ultimately where you are now as running and founding an executive leadership company.
Yeah, so my I spent 10 years in heavy industry as reliability engineer, asset manager, those type of roles. And I started in coal mining. I spent 5 years doing the heavy industrial consulting. So I like mining, manufacturing, oil and gas, power plants, the whack of
Nice.
them. And then I finished off at Enbridge with I did a couple years in oil pipelines. And along that journey, actually my first job, I had an asshole boss and I really struggled with my mental health. And when I started consulting, I started seeing folks at almost all the plants I went to. There was a few folks that were unhappy. A lot of the folks felt, and you know this, Brian, is they felt like their ideas weren't valued, that they weren't valued, that nobody was listening to them. They were telling all these things, but then nobody cared.
Right.
And I started learning about leadership and I started learning about what leadership could be. And of course, I went on my own mental health healing journey. I did a lot of therapy. I did coaching. I took all the certifications, blah, blah, blah. And then I started coaching folks off the side of my desk. And like you were part of the first group we ran.
Yep.
And in 2021, I quit my engineering job to start coaching folks full time. And then since then, it's been just like a rocket ship. Like I've coached, I don't know. I mean, if you take group programs and one-on-ones, I've probably done 400 people at this point. And I did a TED talk in 2023, which was released 4 months ago, and now it's about 150,000 views.
Nice.
Um, I've written a book. It's going to publishers right now, so that'll be out in 2025. And then, folks, yeah, if you want to check any of that stuff out, go to robkalvarowski.com. You can find it all there. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. The fact that you come from where I come from, in just the heavy industry. I mean, I think there's a big misconception. We talk to a lot, and a lot of people in manufacturing and like, pharmaceuticals and things. There's a big difference between those types of operations and mining. It's just a different world. You get the same type of like technical expertise, but you get a different type of person um, that finds their way into leadership roles and things like that, right? I mean, in the mobile mining and oil and gas, it's like people who have done the work heavily. They work their way up. Maybe they're not always the best person for the job, but they've done a good job at their job, so they get promoted into these positions they may not be ready for. In manufacturing, it's like more degreed people and people who have a little bit of experience, but they're more coming from like a business perspective into leadership. Um, but the mining side of it is, and I've told you about this in our chats and in our coaching sessions, where um, you just get some hard people, and it's like, no, this is the only way,
Yeah.
and it's my way because I've been doing this like this for 40 years, and that's what you're going to do too. Uh, and I for sure see how that can be. a mess for the growth and mental health of a lot of people. Um, so going from, being the guy doing the work, being the smart person, the reliability engineer, all of that, into having to essentially be the leader for people you don't even know, right? As a consultant, as a coach, as teaching people about leadership and how to navigate leadership. What was that like? Because I know when I went from being a mechanic to a maintenance engineer to a maintenance manager, knowing the stuff is normal, right? But it's the knowing how to talk, how to communicate, how to not feel like, what do they call it? What do we call it? Imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
So what was that like?
For me, I always deferred to the folks that were on the floor. And so as a consultant, I didn't walk in and this is something that leaders sometimes they get wrong, right? You get hired in a new job, you're the manager, you walk in and you're like, this is my way. And because you want to make an impact in the first, 3 months,
Right.
right? And it's like actually what you want to do is listen.
Right.
And I always used to go to these plants and I would go and I would find the old kind of curmudgeon-y guy, but the guy who knows everything, and I'd be like, hey, what's wrong?
Right.
What's like show me the things that you know are the big problems. And like it's the first time anyone's listened to him in 5 years, and they always like they would light up, and then they would just
Yeah.
they would spend we would spend like 3 4 days, and it'd be there. This is what we need to do. This, and it's like you're just writing it down and like taking pictures, and it's like, okay, I'll take this and I'll
Yeah.
present it to your management team. But it's the folks on the ground know what the problems are, and like that's why there's a lot of continuous improvement methodologies around like go do managing by walking around or go do Gemba walks or like go out there. And it's like a lot of folks don't do that because you like as managers, you have tons of meetings. And like it's even gotten worse. I know most of the folks listening probably don't work remotely, like you're in a plant or you're in a thing, but it's like since the pandemic, I've just seen this massive increase of meetings. And it's like, I have clients that are in 3 meetings at the same time, which is
Easy.
not possible,
Yeah.
but they're on 3 different calls at the same time.
Right.
And so it's like, you got to start saying no to some of those meetings and you got to get to your people.
Yes. Agree. 100%. When I met you, I was living in New Orleans. So like I moved my whole family to New Orleans to be on site to do the work and lead the teams that I was responsible for. Could I have done it through Zoom? Yeah, but what kind of leader would I be leading technical $100 million in assets at a coal facility and I'm behind a screen, right? Um, and when I went and worked for then my next job, which was Bowery Farming, as leading up their maintenance program, I would decline tons of meetings. And everyone would be like, "Oh, he's mean, he's hard to talk to." It's like, no, 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 no. I'm interested in what my team is experiencing. I'm not interested in some VP saying we need to do predictive maintenance. Like, dude, shut up. Like, your guys don't even have a torque wrench. Why are you even saying these words? Right.
Yeah.
So I hear you. And I think that's one of the reasons why we connected so well is because that is where all the value is. Right. It's like George Williams said one time, he's like, all your answers are out on the shop floor.
Yeah.
You just got to go out there and experience it. Why do you,
There's a balance here,
oh, go
right?
ahead, go ahead.
So I always teach folks is if you get a meeting invite and you feel like it's not going to be a value add, is send a note back and say, how would you like me to contribute to this meeting?
That's a good one.
And then if they say, hey, we just want you to listen, you can say, like, especially now with AI, it's
Right.
like record the meeting
Summarize.
and like like if it's a Teams meeting, Microsoft will generate you the meeting notes. So somebody doesn't even need to type it up anymore.
Right.
And so it's like you can just say, hey, Microsoft AI thing, like tell me what was in this meeting. And like you can take a meeting or you can watch it at 2x speed, right? So you can take it from an hour to 30 minutes, or you can even just read the notes,
Right.
right? The other thing that you need to be aware of as maintenance folks is you want to build relationships with the executives and the people who have power in your organization. You don't have to do this through group meetings. You need to do this through one-on-ones. And it's about going to those people, like basically asking them how you can help them, what are the things that they need and how would they look good, making that happen for them, and then politely talking about your goals.
Sure.
And they can green light things for you, and they can like budget, they can green light people, they can green light promotions. Like that is a very strategic thing that everybody listening should be doing.
Right. Yeah. So one of the tactics that I use significantly, and I think we talked about this a long time ago, is building the relationships, right? Getting some quick wins with the team, and then leveraging those quick wins with your methodology that you want to move forward. And then when you talk to leadership, you reference this methodology and the measurable and actionable wins that you've had. So like this in maintenance, is a quick one is just doing a facility assessment and finding where the operators people are just wasting some random time. It might be something dumb like this bolt's been loose for 2 years, and it's causing us to stop every 5 minutes, right? So you get those quick wins. What do we call it? The high probability high impacts or high probability low impacts, whatever it is. Get that win and that data under it. Then you go, like you say, go to the leadership. Hey man, sir, ma'am, this is what we've been doing. Have you noticed? Like, oh great. How does that help you? Like, how can we, continue this methodology forward? Um, and it's invaluable. So for you, when you're talking, and you know me, I'm a maintenance guy through and through. So I'm probably going to talk a lot about maintenance side of this stuff, Rob.
Totally. Yeah.
Um, so when you're talking to maintenance leadership, when I'll just use your example as going in as a consultant and talking to the old crusty guy who, feels like his voice hasn't been heard. Because I've done this too, and I'm just curious about your experience here. Is when you go talk to leadership about those problems or those concerns of the team, how do they normally react to it?
So this is where the pitch is what matters. And early on in my career, I was an engineer, right? And so you're like, hey, this is the technical problem. And this is how much, well, I did some finance and economics in college. So I was like, this is how much money you can save, right? Those were kind of how I packaged everything.
Sure.
Now as an executive coach, there's more to pitches, right? And a lot of it is we talk about, like I do a lot of work with people's mindsets and their psychology, right? And it's like we need to tell the story. And it doesn't have to be the story about the bucket that's, underneath that's catching the oil leak that's costing you million, right? It could be that, like I had one yesterday where one of my executives who works at a Fortune 500 telecom company, right? She's working on a pitch and she was like, you know what? I want to tell this story as part of the pitch. I wanted to change my flight with KLM and I called their customer support line and it was going to cost me, $600 to change from Friday to Saturday. But then you know what the guy told me? He said, actually, you know what? You can save money because you have this type of ticket. Just cancel this ticket and buy a new one and it'll save you $400. And she's like, I want to use that to show that my department and how we're going to change, we're going to do that for our internal clients. And instead of you telling me and me trying to maximize the profit or maximize how good my department looks, we're going to maximize the service for our internal clients.
Sure.
And so, like, think of things as part of your pitch that you've experienced in life. and bring that part of it and add emotion and really show future state and not say, I'm not saying show it like, well, this thing isn't going to leak anymore, but it's like, imagine if we didn't have to dump 50 gallons of oil every 2 weeks.
Right.
Or like imagine how much life would be easier if your production line, when you just turned it on, it just works,
Right.
right? Like you're painting a picture of the future and you're getting people inspired to come on the journey with you.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. Storytelling is super important and leveraging, not leveraging, but taking into account who you're talking to, right? The knowing your audience and what are
Yeah,
they connected to? What's valuable to them? Um, I know going in and driving conversations like that, I normally, when I do things or used to do things like that as a leader, maintenance leader, I normally wasn't trying to tell them what I was going to do. I was normally using what we've done and made impacts with, but also what does it mean for them?
that's right.
Right. So, safety, for instance. Okay, well, if we have defect elimination, we're going to stop touching things more often. We're not going to touch things as often, and then therefore technicians aren't in harm's way. They're less in harm's way, right? I think Ron Moore said it, right? A
Yeah.
reliable plan is a safe plan. Operations teams, like, hey, we keep having product quality issues because of A, B, C, and D. I'm like, great, give me 2 hours, and then your product issues will be severely reduced over the next 6 months until while we implement some form of, strategy to solve these problems for you. Yeah, I mean, that storytelling is so good, right? I mean, it's like, what do they call it? It's like you're showing like humility, right? You're showing some what's the other one? Vulnerability, especially if you talk about how things don't work or like
Mhm.
how you struggled with those things and now like you're not. So you can help show a value stream or impact. Um, did you ever find, because what I've found sometimes with those leadership conversations after I've evaluated a department or a team, sometimes the leader doesn't like you poking holes uh, in what they've been doing. And talking about going out, and I'm just kind of linking two things together here, going out and being with the team and experiencing the reality of your maintenance or your whatever department. Sometimes those leaders, they're worried about doing that because they may get exposed as not knowing all the things.
Yes.
And I've helped people with that in the past, young maintenance leaders and stuff that worked for me and whatever. And to me, it's like you need to embrace those things that you don't know. Two things are going to happen here. You are going to learn things and you're going to build trust and relationships with your team because they're able to now see that you're not a piece of shit thinking you know everything and you're just command and control, right? But you're able to take criticism, take learning from people who are your subordinates. It's like, I don't, to me, you understand a lot better, but to me, why would you not do that?
Yeah. So if you're a manager out there, absolutely you want to do what Brian's saying, right? You want to get folks on your team. You want to curate trust and psychological safety so they tell you what's going on so
Yeah.
you can fix it. And ultimately, you'll look better because you'll have better uptime, you'll have better performance, you'll have lower costs. Like all the things are going to be better. Like, and people will be happier. It's like it's a win 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 for
Yeah.
everybody,
It's just
right?
crazy.
The reality is this. And this is from the person who did a TED talk about asshole bosses and has written a book about asshole bosses, right? Is 25% of bosses out there, well, 5.5% of people experience a boss called like an arrogant and violent boss. So
Right.
picture, Gordon Ramsay on Hell's Kitchen, right? He throws the dish
Every
on the
day.
ground. You're a donut, like, that kind of thing. Like I know he's playing it up, but that basically that's what it is,
He'd
right?
get punched.
Yeah, well, in a mining context, he totally would, yeah. Um, in a And then 19.5% of folks experience a boss called an abusive narcissist, which is someone who's a little bit less like not violent, but like, I'm always right, you're an idiot. Like I'm accepting, or I'm taking for me all the wins and I'm shoving the blame on somebody else.
Right. Like divisive.
Yeah. And so these like 25% of folks experiencing a boss like this right now. And so this is what you're talking about. These leaders are me first.
Right.
And if I don't look good, I have a problem. And it's psychology, right? So, and actually the kind of the shitty part about it is that folks that fall into these categories are seen as leaders and they get promoted, and you see a higher percentage of them at upper echelons of organizations. And there's a whole whack of research about this. And if you want to learn how to build power and influence, give me a call, right? But for people out there who have an asshole boss like that, you don't want to make them look bad. So it's not about, hey, you're wrong. It's paint the picture for them about how amazing they'll look when everything goes improves.
Yeah.
And it's also like this. Hey Bryan, how can I help you? And then they say something like, well, I want to blah blah blah. Like they're looking to get promoted.
Sure.
And so you can say like, what do you think if we could, increase the metrics? Like what are some of the metrics or deliverables that are most important to you?
Right.
Right. And it is in like, it's one of Robert Greene's rules of power, which is like, make your boss look good. I mean, he says it in a different way, but basically this, right? Now, on the other side of this, I want to also mention this. If you work for a person like this and they are abusing you or they're violent towards you and it is impacting your mental and physical health, which it probably will, get out,
Yeah. Leave.
because you are more important than your job and your shitty boss.
Right. So when you say those things, it reminds me of what like planting seeds. I used to have a lot of conversations with my teams at various organizations, and they would say things. We'd have some asshole
Yeah.
leadership, right? Fortunately, I didn't report to any of them. I was, either same line or above, but I still needed to influence, right? I still needed to get them on my side a lot of the times. And some of the other maintenance leadership that worked with me or for me would always be like, why did you say that to that guy? Like what? Not mean or but like trying I call it planting seeds, but like trying to you just there's certain things you can do and say in relationship to certain contexts where that person's now going to be thinking about what you've said. Not negatively, not maybe not positively, but it's just there,
Yeah.
right? And I would always say, hey, look, I'm planting a seed because I know from our perspective, we're going to need to be doing A, B, C, and D in the future. And that person is going to rely on some of those things. So I want them to know far ahead of time my intent and that it's positive. It's being communicated positively, and it is positive, right? But some people have egos are like, even
Yeah.
if it's good, they don't want to do it because it's not their idea, right?
Yeah.
And I'd say that's for me, that's what I call planting seeds. It's unofficially building a relationship with somebody, right?
So this is, I want to say two things about this. One is, whatever your goal is for folks out there, you want to get promoted, you want to get a raise, you whatever, like even if you want to try a new department
Sure.
or try, a new role, like whatever that is for you, talk about it to everybody who will listen all the time, right? There's a rule in marketing. It's like the rule of seven, which is like people need to hear something seven times before they're going to take an action.
Yeah.
Same thing with exactly what you're talking about change. Like we all, in reliability, it's like we got to change the culture. We got to do things new. We got to have
Yeah.
new software, blah, blah, blah. Talk about it all the time with
Yeah.
everyone because for the first 5 times, they won't remember,
Yeah.
right? And then at some point in the future, they're going to come to you and go, "Hey, Bryan, you know, this upkeep software, let's do it."
Yeah.
And you're like sitting there going, "Yeah,
Oh, great
finally."
idea, boss. You have a great idea.
Yeah. And then, right. And it's like, it's like, but it takes time for these things, but
Sure.
it's like, just keep doing it. And you're going to be like, well, Rob, like people must get bored of me because I just say the same thing all the time.
Hey, in maintenance, we say the same things all the time.
Yeah. And it's like, the answer to that is yes, you are repeating yourself, but you're doing it in different ways for different people over email, over, chat, over in person, right? And then you're doing it in different ways. Like I'm not saying say the same exact thing,
Right.
although you can definitely do that too, because just do it. Oh, well, we think of Nike, right? You can
Yep.
say the same thing, but people people will eventually start going, oh, I heard about this thing, and they won't remember where they heard it from.
Right.
And then they'll start coming or they'll come to you and go, "Hey, Bryan, I know you were thinking about like pivoting into operations. Like there's a role here. Do you want to take it?"
Right.
Right? These are the things that we need to do.
Yeah. And in that respect, or that the context of this conversation, it makes me think about, and I'm again from a maintenance standpoint, right? It makes me think about having a unifying vision as a leader, right?
Yes.
Having your vision of what you want to see, whether it's your work center, department, business unit, whole business, whatever, having that hashed out to a certain degree will help you in this process because you will know where you want to be before you even start having these conversations. So when you start dropping these seeds or you start having this what I call like a stump speech, right?
Yeah.
You already know the potential outcome for you, your team, whatever it is. So vision creation is huge, right? Being able to visualize what you want to see for the or maybe it's just what you want to see for one person, right? Maybe you have an
Yeah.
ace who just maybe struggles with sticking up for themselves or showing their value, right? And you want that guy to be the next lead electrician at the plant. Same thing. What's your vision for that employee? Where do you want to see them go? And then how do you get shit out of the way for
Yeah.
him to go that way? And it also helps to plant those seeds, being like, hey, just talking to VP, go, hey, Jimmy, you got that thing figured out real quick. Man, that guy's going to go places one of these days, right? And then when you go to promote him in 6 months, oh, this is Jimmy. Jimmy's the guy who got us out of that downtime in 10 seconds. Oh, pff, approved.
Yeah.
Vision. What do you have to say about vision?
It's funny, Bryan. Not enough people have a clear goal for themselves.
Hmm.
And like, I mean, given the last, like my own transformation, right? Um, I I did a talk, I don't know, it was a few months ago, and I was like, I kind of assumed everybody had a goal in the room,
Right.
and that was a bad assumption.
They're like, I don't know what I'm doing, Rob.
And it was like, I was just like, well, what's like, I was like, I kind of was like, okay, here are the steps that you can take to achieve your goal. And then it was like, people didn't have a clear goal. And so if you're out there, think about, and like, if you want to send me an email, rob@robkalwarowsky.com or hit me up on LinkedIn, right? Like I can send you some tools for like visualizations or goal. Like if you just want to goal set, like there's a lot of things we can work on, but it's like set a goal for yourself. And the hardest part about goal setting for people is opening up the perspective and like being expansive. And I'll say this, right? 5 years ago, I was the depressed corporate engineer at an oil pipeline company and I lived in Edmonton. Now I'm living in Costa Rica. I'm married. I have two dogs and a cat somehow. I've done a TED talk that has been seen 150,000 times. I've written a book and I'm an executive coach, which when I started 5 years ago, I didn't even really know that was a job.
Right.
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 Right. And it's like, you like in 5 years, you can literally be anything you want.
That's right.
And so if you want, like, and so that's where we work a lot with folks on ikigai, which is like a concept of like your life's purpose
Hmm.
and like what are the natural gifts that you have, and like how do we combine that with, often it's what are some of the painful things you've experienced in your life that have forced you to change, and now what do you see? And like you see this with me is like a lot of what I do is around bad bosses, but then I also coach leaders on how to become better leaders.
Yeah.
And so it's very passion driven for me, and or purpose driven, but it's like that's where I start with a lot of folks. And then once you have a clear goal, it becomes really easy to start executing the steps and building, just like we talked about, like telling everyone this is your goal. Like before we jumped on, I said to Bryan, my goal is to do 15 keynotes
Yeah.
next year,
Yep.
right?
I heard it.
And I say it to everybody because I walk the walk too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's so true. And communicating those things also puts some accountability into perspective, right? If I tell you something five or six, seven, eight times and then I don't do it, well, the people I told are gonna be like, he's always saying stuff,
Yeah.
right? He's not actually achieving. But also, too, I think it, you know, no one's coming to save you, right? I mean, you have to, and I know it's tough sometimes, but like sometimes, like you have to be the one to stand up for you
Yes.
and say, this is what I'm going to do because I don't want to be where I am. And I certainly don't want to go back to where I was. And like your story is immense in that. It's like you're a MIT, right? Is where you went,
Yes,
Rob?
sir. Yeah.
MIT graduate, reliability engineer, soup to nuts, all around badass, technical expert, all this stuff. But at the end of the day, you go home and you're like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
The engineering side for you is a walk in the park, but you have this looming cloud of poor leadership that's destroying your ability to be your best self. And like you say all the time, there's hundreds, maybe millions of people that are in that exact same situation. And it's going to take them most of the time to be like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm taking control of these things. I'm going to seek help. I'm going to do whatever it takes to move forward. Um, I did it. I told you about that a long time ago.
Totally.
I,
Yeah.
I mean, managing 7 locations around the country, 24 hours a day, hundreds of people you're responsible for to lead and to facilitate success for, traveling every week, other week. I just couldn't do it. And it was hard for me to cut off that life that I had built and I'd worked up through, but I just had to do it. And now, working for UpKeep, I have the ability to go pick my kids up from school. I'm here when my wife gets home from work and I can make dinner for her, right? And the family. So yeah, I took a big pay cut, but my bank of fulfillment is so much more full, right? Sorry, that
Yeah.
was a bit of a rant there, but
No, no, no. It's really great because this is what, like, all of the work I do in terms of, it doesn't matter if it's coaching executives, it doesn't matter if it's the TED or the book. Like, my message is you can be the person who chooses for you.
right.
And we don't do this enough. And I didn't even do it. Like, I had a job that I literally tried to commit suicide on the Sunday night. And I got up the next day and I put on my clothes and I went to work. And I knew it was killing me, but I didn't have the self. Part of my psychology was like, well, you got to make money to be a whole person. you got to work to be some contributing person in society, because my parents really like were like that, right? And it's like that's what I learned, and that was my beliefs, and I was trapped in this world where it's like there was nothing other than my own mind that was keeping me there.
Right.
Like I could have quit my job, I could have drove back, I could have lived with my parents, like it wouldn't have been this catastrophic thing, right? But it was like the brain is so powerful, and that's why I work with folks. We always start here,
Right.
but it's you need to choose for you, because when you're living somebody else's, choice, or what society says, like you said it, I did all the right things.
Yeah.
My parents said, "Hey, do well in school." So I did. So then, and they were like, "So then you can get into the best college. So then you can get the best job." And so I did that, right? I went to MIT. I got a job. I was making like $150,000 a year. And then I'd go home at night and I was like, I want to die.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it took a lot of therapy. And I'm sitting there in therapy and I was like, you know what? I did everything right. And yet I'm sitting here at 35 years old and I want to die. And then it's like, but now I can choose to do something different.
That's right.
And the part, like, I don't want people to get there.
Right.
I want people to choose, like, almost everybody who hires me as a coach, they're in some pain. They're burnt out. They're not getting promoted. They're frustrated with their work. They're, they have problems. But it's like you don't need to have problems to change. You just want to, you can just like you could literally just be like, you know what, Rob, I want to improve my life, right? I know it's not really in human nature to do that, but you heard Brian's story, you heard my story. You can take that and you can start improving, like choose to do something about it.
Right. Yeah. My hobbies. I'm a tinkerer. I'm always working on machines and getting dirty and being tired and hurting myself. But that's what I choose. I'm choosing that. Right. And because I'm choosing it and it's something that I love, I'm more fulfilled. And people on weekends will look at me and be like, dude, why are you so filthy? I'm like, because I'm happy,
Yeah.
you know? It is crazy. And, I'm glad you're here, right? Because if you had have not made the choice you did, I never would have met you, right? And then hundreds of people would have never had the experience that you've given them in choosing themselves over all these other things. Um, and I know we have a lot of friends who like also went and we all participated in your first cohort, your first leadership launch pad. Um, and the funny thing is I still talk to a handful of them, right? I know
Yeah.
you do too. Um, so we're finishing up here. Tell us just a little bit about the book for 2025.
Yeah. So the book, Antidote for the Asshole Boss. So it talks about the 6 destructive leadership types, which are, we talked about 2 of them. Of course, there's 4 more. You can learn those in the TED Talk as well. But it also talks about the psychology and then how we can start transforming our psychology to unlock the expansiveness and fulfillment and happiness and transform our own lives. So it's definitely not like, I don't want folks to be like, oh, I'm just like shaming bad bosses. Like, we all have parts of us that are assholes,
Yeah,
right? I have yelled at a person in a meeting before,
me too.
you know, like I've done some things that I'm not super proud of, right? But what it is we all have, we all have the tendency, or we all have parts of us that want to do those things.
The choice, we make the choice, right?
But as we become leaders of our own selves, that's when we can choose not only to live the life we want, but we can choose how we want to lead. And of course, we're going to talk about the 6 types of leaders and like how what their behaviors are and what their psychology is like. But it's also about learning, one is what are some of the behaviors and just noticing if you're doing any of those, but then making the choice to be a better leader and to treat yourself better.
Right.
Right. And I had these parts like we just talked about. I had these parts that were an asshole to me. Myself was an asshole to me. And you, everybody listening, you have a part that does that to you too. Whether you're judging yourself, whether you're telling yourself, you shouldn't ask this person on a date, you shouldn't ask for a raise, you shouldn't call this person and try to sell them on your product, whatever that is, you have a part like that. But you can choose to learn and outgrow that
Right.
and become the best leader you can be and the best self you can be.
Yeah. 100%. Well said. It's about choosing you, us, ourselves, right? But also as leaders saying we more, and not I, me, I'm this, I'm that. No, we are in this together. I'm the facilitator here. I'm the leader. I'm the one that's responsible. I'm going to take ownership of these things, whether good or bad. And I'm going to get stuff out of the way for my team. And I'm going to go to bat for people who deserve to have, and I'm going to get angry sometimes, and that's okay. But I have to be big enough to apologize and to say I'm wrong and that I'm sorry. And those were hard things. I know I told you soup to nuts
Absolutely.
about where I came from, man. Just wanting to be the best at this thing. And wasn't nice to people. I was like, dude, you suck at your job, man. Don't fucking talk to me. Like get out of here, and it didn't help me at all. You could be the best whatever, but you can also still be a good person at the core and choose to change and do the right things. And everything you say, like I said, I'm deeply invested in, and you've helped me change the way that I approach things, not just in work, but mostly in life. Because honestly, that's what we talked about the most.
it's 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 all the same. Our
Yeah.
brains follow us everywhere.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you so much, Rob. I know we got to keep catching up. If anybody's listening, please, please, please get a hold of Rob. Rob is the pinnacle of truly understanding, specifically anybody, right? But I speak for maintenance because that's where I live.
Thank you. Thank you.
Maintenance leaders have a rough job. They have a tremendous amount of responsibility. They have tremendous working schedules. And the cost benefit of employing Rob to help you shape those things out is immeasurable. I mean, it is like so much value. And I really encourage people to do it. I did it and it worked for me. And I'm a hard head and a pain in the ass. But again, Rob, again, thank you so much on behalf of Upkeep. Thank you. We really, really appreciate you being on here today and telling the story and everything that you have to offer, and mutual, stories as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much, Brian. Yeah. I mean, for folks out there, so if you want the first two chapters of my book, if you go to my website, it's at the bottom of the homepage, or maybe there'll be a page now. But you can put your email in and we'll send you the first two chapters of the book. If you have bulk orders over 50, let me know because we can make that happen. We just can't sell individual books yet. And then, yeah, of course, if you want some one-on-one coaching or group leadership stuff, hit me up. As well as I said it, I want to do 15 keynotes. So if you're hosting a corporate leadership summit for your own company, or you're hosting a conference, I'm here for you.
I 100% recommend that people take advantage of that. You will not be disappointed. I mean, you're looking at a guy who's in Costa Rica right now wearing a sweet shirt in the beautiful weather. I'm in a sweatshirt in my house because it's freezing cold where I am, right? So it can be done. Rob, thank you. And
Thank
we
you
will
so much,
see
Brian.
you on the next one, brother.